President Barra Jagdeo reiterates Guyana is not in immediate danger in the face of the global financial crisis following discussions with the central bank and local commercial banks.
Police have recovered the car stolen from the environmentalist who was shot dead last evening in front of her David Street Kitty home.
And the United States 2008 report on international religious freedom has lauded the government of Guyana for its respect for religious freedom and practice.
So details of these and other stories, business news, and of course the latest sporting action in the Diamond Mineral Water and NCN Sport News and more. But first, these messages. Good evening, I'm Delicia Fletcher.
And I'm Paul Moore.
With this edition of the 6 o'clock news for today, Monday, October 13, 2008. Here's what's happening, Paul.
Thanks, Delicia. President Barra Jagdeo reiterates that in light of discussions held with both central and commercial banks, Guyana is not in immediate danger in the face of the global financial crisis. In an exclusive interview with NCN, the head of state affirms only a small fraction of their assets are held abroad and believes our banks are in a fairly strong position. Details in this report. His Excellency President Barra Jagdeo says apart from discussions, he reviewed reports of the Bank of Guyana and commercial banks. This, he noted, confirms the solidity of the local banks.
And it seems as though our banks are in a fairly solid position. Just a tiny fraction of their assets are held abroad.
Even the monies held abroad, the head of state added, are mainly for corresponding relationships.
And even those assets that are held abroad, there are small sums of money held in various banks, largely for correspondent relationship, for the issuance of LCs, etc.
The President continued that most of the overseas assets are held in regional financial institutions, and he's pleased about that.
Have largely been in Caribbean-based instruments and Caribbean institutions. So even of the small fraction of their total assets that are held abroad, most of that is held in the Caribbean with government bonds, etc., and some of the regional financial institutions.
With the drop in crude oil on the international market and the Petro-Caribbean agreement, there are some huge foreign currency gains for Guyana. And according to the President, this puts the local economy in a stronger position.
The supply of foreign currency to our markets is assured. If we were using over 300 million US dollars a year in just importing fuel prices have fallen by 40%. It was 147, that's crude oil. Now it's come down to about some $80 per barrel, $85 per barrel. That's a huge drop in the foreign currency that we'd be using to import fuel. And we have over $60 million that we've accumulated US dollars in the Petro-Caribbean funds that's just sitting there. This is outside of our reserves, which are over 300 million US dollars. So we have some of the highest reserve to import ratio in the Caribbean region.
Asked about the PNCR's recent claims of a possible devaluation of the Guyana dollar, the head of state says the opposition party is deficient in financial analyses and is bent on causing panic. He chides the party to take a page from the opposition in other countries.
In the U.S. Congress, the Democrats and the Republicans got together and they approved the bailout package. In fact, more opposition members voted for the bailout package in the U.S. than the Republicans, those who are in power. But here we have an opposition party that is marred in the past, that is not positive about anything, and I think largely because they have deficient analyses of the situation.
Chief Executive Officer of the Guyana Power and Light Company, Bart Dindial, says the initiative to build a $40 million transmission line from Skeldon to Parika augurs well for consumers. President Barra Jagdeo recently signed a funding letter of intent with the Exim Bank of China for this project. More in this Akila Jacobs report.
The Ghana Power and Light Company says with a $40 million transmission line from Skeldon to Parika represents the next generation of electricity supply in Guyana. The initiative will see the building of a number of substations to regulate voltage automatically and distribute bulk power to certain areas that traditionally suffered from poor supply. Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana Power and Light Company, Bardin Diel, lists areas that previously experienced this problem.
On the west coast, we have one feeder actually from Versailles to Lookout, and you could understand that the quality of supply that consumers at Parika and those areas would enjoy is not what occurs typically. On the east coast, we have a severe problem with overloading of feeders, especially from Baijival, in fact from Caldejon to Baijival. In Upper East Coast, in the Mahikoni area, we have a problem with the quality of supply. In fact, in east of Antwerp, going up to Rosignol also, we have problems with the quality of supply.
Dindiel says complemented with hydropower by its scheduled 2012 due date, power from Sophia will be distributed from Parika to Molson Creek efficiently. According to Dindiel, the entire coastal network being integrated would also allow the company to utilize larger efficient heavy-duty engines, increasing the capacity to distribute power. Cutting operation costs is the benchmark of the undertaking.
What it does is that it would allow us to reduce our generation costs. It would allow us to improve the stability of the power supply. It would enable consumers to receive a better quality supply.
Speaking of some possible benefits for GPL, the CEO explains that there will be a significant reduction in technical losses, the reduction in generation costs and fuel reduction since the company will be operating primarily on heavy fuel oil. The CEO says while the company will not be exposed to spiraling costs for diesel, reduction in costs will be filtered to consumers, leading to a decrease in electricity tariffs. Reporting for the NCN 6 o'clock news, Akila Jacobs.
Police have recovered the car stolen from the environmentalist who was shot dead last evening in front her David Street Kitty home. The car, according to the dead woman's father, was found abandoned but intact in South Rheinfeldt this morning. Edward Lane reports.
Reports are that around the 22 hours yesterday, 26-year-old Alicia Foster, an environmental officer with the Environmental Protection Agency, was shot in the face by one of the three men who escaped in her car. NCN spoke with the dead woman's father, James Foster, who said the car was found abandoned in the South Rheinfeldt area. However, no one was arrested. This newscast understands that Alicia was accompanied by her 17-year-old sister to a wake in Bent Street and had just returned home when the brutal attack occurred. The distraught father said his younger daughter was opening the gate when two of the men disembarked from their vehicle, came over to the sister and ordered Alicia to exit the car. The woman, however, put up a resistance and was shot in the face. After shooting Foster, the men reportedly dragged the injured woman out of her vehicle and drove away. One eyewitness told NCN that she was right outside when the incident occurred. According to the woman, an unidentified tall man of African descent was standing behind a tree opposite the Foster's home for a long period. The eyewitness says shortly after the arrival of the woman, a heavily tinted black car pulled up and two men of East Indian descent exited and held the woman at gunpoint, after which she heard a single gunshot. The two men then re-entered the tinted car and drove off while the other man drove away with Alicia's car. According to another eyewitness, they returned in another car and asked about the woman who was just shot. Both eyewitnesses say they are able to identify the men if they see them again. Meanwhile, a source at the EPA believes that the woman may have been targeted since she dealt with complaints and responses in the Environmental Management Division of the EPA. And police sources say there are no signs of a robbery. Edward Lane, the 6 o'clock news.
The United States 2008 report on international religious freedom has lauded the government of Guyana for its respect for religious freedom and practice. The recently released report says there was no change in the status of respect for religious freedom by the government during the period covered by the report. There were no reports of societal abuses or discrimination based on religious affiliation, belief, or practice. According to the report, government has put in place a legislative framework that provides for freedom of religion, and other laws and policies contributed to the generally free practice of religion. The report says both public and religiously affiliated schools exist in Guyana, and parents are free to send their children to the school of their choice without sanction or restriction.